Good morning. My name is Gavin Smith. I am a science fiction writer. Now, you'll see intrigue here is crossed out. This is because I was told that there was a rough theme of intrigue at Picocon this year. And I don't know if any of you ever did this thing when you were at school. You were given a subject to write an essay about. And you sort of try and find a way to talk about what you want to talk, or in my case, just ignore it and do what I was going to do anyway. And I mean, this happened to me at school. I got given an essay on the Celts in a history, and I wrote some Slain fanfic. So, I mean, I can explain how I got from intrigue to here, depending on how interested you are, or I can just get on with it. I'll just get on with it. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about resistance in science fiction, and I'm going to start by talking about V for Vendetta, the graphic novel. We'll come to the film a little bit later. Has anybody read the graphic novel? Just by show of hands? All right, so fair few of you. Excellent. For those of you who don't, I'm just going to quickly give you an idea of the story. V for Vendetta is a dystopian, near-future social science fiction story where nuclear war has devastated the rest of the world. The UK has been taken over by a fascist, totalitarian government, and the story follows a titular character, V, an anarchist revolutionary who wages a particularly theatrical guerrilla war against the fascist government. He wishes to inspire the people to not only abandon fascism, but democracy as well, in favour of anarchy, and in doing so he also inspires and sometimes terrorises his protege, a young woman named Evie Hammond. Okay, so some of you have read V for Vendetta. Did anybody read this? There's not an awful lot of you who, so a few people. I can just about remember this in the shops. I read a couple of copies, and that's where I first came across V for Vendetta. Now, it was written by Alan Moore, illustrated by David Lloyd, and initially published in black and white, and then it became a 10-issue limited series published by DC Comics, who of course you've all heard of. Ironically, the strip wasn't very popular in Warrior. Now, Warrior was an anthology title, a little bit like 2000 AD. The editor and publisher, Des Skin, remarked, if I'd given each character their own title, the failures would have outweighed the successes, with the uncompromising V for Vendetta probably being an early casualty. But as a strip and an anthology, it survived until Warrior was cancelled in 1985. Now, at the time that Warrior magazine was cancelled, the story, V for Vendetta, was unfinished, and it wasn't completed until the DC miniseries. And at which point the miniseries came out. Both Moore and Lloyd were very well established in the world of comics. And what that actually means, particularly in the 1980s, is they were very well established in the world of American comics. So, the kernel of the idea came from a story that Moore submitted to a comic strip competition run by D.C. Thomson in 1975, in which a transsexual terrorist waged war on a totalitarian state. Now, he lost out in the competition to a greengrocer from Hull who'd written a story called Battler Bun, He Bombs the Hun. And, of course, we've all heard of that, yes? Okay. So, when Warrior asked him to do a script, Lloyd and Moore kicked around a few ideas, came up with the idea of a terrorist stroke freedom fighter who dresses as Guy Fawkes. Calling on inspiration from a far afield as Huxley, Orwell, David Bowie, Harlan Ellison's Repent, Harlequin, said the TikTok man. The Prisoner, Max Dern's painting, Europe After the Rain. In fact, the name of the painting was changed to Reign, R-E-I-G-N, and became one of the books in V for Vendetta. This picture is from the graphic novel version of Repent, Harlequin, said the TikTok man, which is, of course, the single best name for a story ever. And if you haven't read Harlan Ellison, I really, really do advise that you go and read Harlan Ellison. He's a wonderful, wonderful writer. This is After the Rain 2, which is a more interesting picture than After the Rain, in my opinion. So, question is V for Vendetta a form of resistance? Well, first of all, resistance against what? As well as literary, artistic and pop cultural influences, Moore and Lloyd were also very heavily influenced by current events. And of course, at the time they were writing, it was during the height of Margaret Thatcher's regime. She was the then Conservative Prime Minister. Now, Moore wrote this in the introduction to the collected edition. Just have a look at that. These were genuinely things that were happening in the 1980s. Now, I'm drawn to this last sentence. It's cold and it's mean-spirited and I don't like it anymore. Does anybody feel that they can identify with that a little bit at the moment? Okay. So, V for Vendetta. Anarchism good, fascism bad. I'm in the right place. Okay, who doesn't like having politics rammed down their throat in the entertainment that they read, listen to? Okay, a few people, fair enough. Well, I've got you covered. So, initially, V murders members of the fascist government, but as the story develops, Moore deliberately made V's actions very, very morally ambiguous. So it's not quite as simple as anarchism good, fascism bad. Although I'm going to come down on the side of fascism bad. And this is what he said. So as I grow older, I find myself liking pastoral fantasy more and more. Now, there's a reasonable psychological need to relax, just in terms of self-care, just in terms of mental health. We all need it. We all need to be able to switch off. We all need to be able to chill. So, at this age in my life, I'm thinking, give me gentle hobbitness versus the ardent revolutionary media of my youth. Now, obviously, there's a lot of younger people here, but do any of the older people feel a bit like that? Yeah? Yeah, nice, pleasant escapism, frolicking hobbits, things like that. That's nice. You still want to throw a Molotov cocktail? Absolutely. Yeah, no, fair enough. Now, I'm as guilty as wanting to bury my head in the sand, to only listen to my own echo chamber, embrace my own not very comforting biases as anyone else. So perhaps wanting people to think is the revolutionary idea here. Then this happened. Who's seen the film of V for Vendetta? I'm enjoying your enthusiasm. Thank you very much. Who likes it? Show of hands. Oh, considerably less hands go up. Okay. Well, Moore was not a fan. Now, Alan Moore has a very uncomfortable relationship with Hollywood. I suspect that stems from the absolutely disastrous adaptation of From Hell. The film arguably changes the original message by having removed any reference to actual anarchism and the revolutionary actions of V. An interview with the producer Joel Silver revealed that he identifies V in the comic as a kind of clear-cut superhero, a masked avenger who pretty much saves the world, a simplification that goes against Moore's own statement about V's role in the story, which was much more ambiguous, and did leave me asking the question if Joel Silver had actually seen his own film, let alone read the actual graphic novel. So Moore didn't like the film, but he did like this. So you must have known these guys were coming, right? This was part of a series of international protests against the Church of Scientology. I believe it was called Operation Chinology, and we will talk a little bit more about this later. So this is what we call cultural impact. This is the cultural impact, much more of the film than it is the graphic novel. Alan Moore again. So he didn't like the film, sort of liked the effect of it. So the film allegedly inspired Egyptian youth during the 2011 Egyptian revolution. Protesters dressed as V set off a fake barrel of gunpowder outside the Houses of Parliament whilst protesting the MP's expense claim scandal in 2009. Occupy used the mask, and in 2012 the Dubai police declared that painting the mask in the colours of the United Arab Emirates was illegal. I think we kind of laugh at that, but I think it was reasonably serious if you were in Dubai at the time. And then, of course, there's these guys. Did I hear a sharp intake of breath? Thank you for turning off and playing around, whoever that was. So are we familiar with these guys? We're familiar with Anonymous, yeah? So good guys are bad, political or just in it for the lols. However you feel about them, they have aided in actual revolutions. They have forced CEOs to resign. They have attacked internet child pornography sites. They have engaged in campaigns to raise awareness about homelessness, and they have doxed members of the KKK. I probably shouldn't have laughed as I said that. So whatever your opinion of them, for better or worse, this group has had an effect on people, to the point that in 2012, Time magazine called Anonymous one of the 100 most influential people in the world. That's Time magazine. So, do we broadly agree that they have had some effect on the world? Okay. I think this is probably my favourite description of them. I'm sorry it's kind of long, there's so much reading in this. I just thought it'd be easier if you did all the work and I stood here. Everybody got that? Okay. So broadly we agree that protesters wearing Guy Fawkes masks, be they anonymous or otherwise, have had some effect on the world. So here's my question. What do you guys think? Did science fiction cause this?
Science fiction, V for Vendetta equipped people with a set of ideas that they could take and apply and be familiar with as they went out to pursue their activism, but we don't know if it changed the nature of their activism.
No, I suspect what we have here is a case of inspiration. But inspiration for the form of the presentation of the protest. The whys and wherefores are a lot more complicated, and I personally don't think that we have a Pavlovian response to the media that we consume. People don't overthrow the government because a beardy wizard from Northampton told them to. Sadly. See this space, yeah. Not that that was what he was trying to do. I mean, remember what Alan Moore said is all he wanted people to do was think. Think about the questions involved. I mean, if you have any familiarity with Alan Moore, you can be reasonably sure where his politics lie, but he wasn't saying do what V was, but also he was quite pleased when he saw the protesters. So, my question is, does science fiction have any meaning beyond the pages in the books? Or is the faux rebellion, is the resistance, is it all just sort of faux rebellion, faux resistance? So, show of hands. Who thinks our stories, the stories of science fiction and fantasy, have a real world effect? Show of hands, please. Yes? Okay. Who doesn't? Who just thinks they're just stories? So everybody didn't put their hands up either time. What? All right, so we got two of you. Yeah, there's no wrong answers here. Don't worry about this. So, okay. We like these guys, right? So have we got somebody? We have a fan of the Empire, do we? No. Yeah, right. So, in a lot of science fiction conventions, if you ask us to say yes, we like. Who likes the film Star Wars by show of hands? I'm not going to ask you if you don't like it, because I've publicly admitted to not liking Star Wars at conventions before and been booed. So I won't ask you if you don't like it. Okay, so broadly speaking, we like Star Wars, okay? That's my very favourite. Anybody here been to Comic-Con? Yeah. At Comic-Con, the Empire patrols Comic-Con. Yeah. There's a much heavier Imperial presence at Comic-Con. So are we sure we like these guys? Yeah. Let's be honest, though. Boba Fett, Vader, Darth Maul, they're pretty cool, yeah?
They just look cooler.
They just look cooler. That's important. Who here thinks the best film in Star Wars history is Empire Strikes Back? By show of hands. The film where the Empire wins. Okay. Any fans for this guy? Oh, sorry. It's Judge Dredd. Why can't you see that? Is that... Oh, all right. So, Alan Grant, one of the co-creators of 2000 AD, one of the writers of Judge Dredd, that's what he had to say about this. Because this is what we really want, isn't it? I mean, we actually voted for less humans and workers' rights in this country. I'm not talking about you as individuals. In science fiction, we'll lionize the plucky band of rebels fighting corporations, totalitarian governments, genocidal aliens, or enslaving machine intelligence. But that is just lip service. Because something like Dredd is easier, because someone else is doing the hard thinking for us. So Alan Moore wanted us to think, well, when we're making decisions based on what's written on the side of a bus, I'm not sure how successful he was. You guys have got no chance of reading that. Okay, so basically at the top we've got Alan Moore writing Watchmen. He says a superhero fantasy is authoritarian and even fascistic. And then you've got a nerdy fanboy going, awesome! Underneath you've got Chuck, the guy who wrote Fight Club, his surname I can't pronounce. Some movements claim to overcome alienation simply simply recreate the benefits of a fascist demagogue. Nerdy fanboy going, awesome! Chuck and Alan Moore going, what's wrong with you people? The Wachowski sisters writing The Matrix. This reality you think you see around you is a system that draws energy from your body, exists by keeping you trapped in the illusions. As long as you live within it, it can turn you into an agent at any time. Nerdy fanboy. Oh, like feminism and trans people. God damn it, no, from the Wachowski sisters. Star Wars. The villains in the 21st century society are young proto-Nazis groomed by would-be fascists and given voice by public leaders mongering hate. Nerdy fanboys. He is actually the hero and he will get the end in the world. He will get the girl in the end. Star Wars. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. So, you write something, you put it out there, the interpretation very quickly goes beyond what the producers, the writers, or what have you had in mind. Now, some of you may be thinking that photos of cosplayers, an Alan Grant quote, and an internet meme, it's not terribly scientific, is it? To which I say, I don't come to your talks and poke holes in your straw man arguments. But let's be honest, our revolutions, from Star Wars to Blake 7, V for Vendetta to The Matrix, they are all faux revolutions. They're comfort fantasies packaged by and designed to profit powerful corporations to appease, if not satisfy, our need for change, to make sure that we don't get too uppity beyond the odd internet flame war, right?
That's Hollywood.
We happy with that? Okay. So show of hands. Who thinks that science fiction is an effective form of resistance?
We change that to could be.
Could be. Okay. Yeah? Could. Okay. So if I say could be an effective form of resistance, does that get more hands up? Good Lord, people, why have you got so much hope? Glad you mentioned that. We will come to that. Anybody know who this is? This is Mae Jemison, who, as NASA's first female black American astronaut, she directly cited Star Trek as an influence and then later appeared on an episode of The Next Generation. So there's an oft-told story, but there's a reason that Martin Luther King convinced Nichelle Nichols to stay in her role as Uhura in Star Trek. There's a reason that Nichols went on to become a spokesperson for NASA after she publicly criticised them for only hiring white male astronauts. So Edwin Hubble, Carl Sagan, Michio Kaku, SF has inspired countless scientists, and it's helping build the future whether we want it or not. Have a read of this. This is Neil Gaiman interviewed in The Guardian. Doubtless some of you may have read the interview the first time out. But what we're talking about here is inspiration, right? I'm talking about actual resistance. I'm talking about standing up to the corrosive, anti-progress, oppressive forces in the world, whomever our cognitive biases decide they are. Now, all we do is read or sometimes write stories. So that's a pretty tall order, isn't it? Any fans of these? No. YA always seems better at handling some of the bigger issues whilst sort of adult fiction is examining its navel. I was in conversation with the author Stephen Cox as regards this, and he pointed out that more and more people who've grown up with these stories are starting to look at politics in these terms. Now, these may be simplistic stories, although I'm particularly interested how in Hunger Games, and I do apologise for the spoiler, took on the sort of fascistic overlord, but at the same time significantly questioned the rebellion that was going on, the sort of thinking that Alan Moore would have been very pleased with. But again, this is just the same thing as protesters wearing masks. We are taking real-world problems and applying how we see the stories to them, rather than the stories sort of inspiring true rebellion. So, can you all read that? All right. Makes you wonder why I bothered with a slideshow. You watched an entire generation grow up on a diet of Harry Potter, Hunger Games, and Marvel movies. Then you stripped away their hope, their jobs, their futures, and packed the most cartoonish supervillain in history for president, and you're shocked that the children are fighting back. Really? You followed the script to a T. You pumped up millions of kids for 2 decades to believe that they and their friends could make a difference. Then you thrust them all into a dystopian nightmare of violence and persecution, and now you're all shocked that they're acting like Harry and Katniss. Go get them, kids. Leave no one standing. Now, this tweet came about as regards the protests that followed the Marjorie Stonemason Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida. After that, of course, there were huge amounts of protests in the US, and a lot of the children protesting received a great deal of criticism because apparently it's unreasonable to not want to get shot when you go to school. Now, this was science fiction author Patrick S. Tomlinson's response. Subsequently, his Twitter account was suspended, as far as I can tell, because he was targeted for harassment by right-wing identifying Reddit users for not finding Norm Macdonald funny. And again, we're talking about resistance, but basically this is just somebody's opinion, yeah? Anybody know what's going on here? So, go on.
Is it the mocking Jason, the three?
Yes, it is, yeah. Do you know how it's being used here?
Is it mocking as in hypno-fascism?
No, it's a political protest because it was banned in that particular country. I can't remember which one.
Okay, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Women's marches where they're representing their lack of representation by covering their mouth. It's pro-democracy protesters protesting against the military coup in Thailand in 2014. Now again, what you could say is this is just the same thing. This is just, the masks. They're using an element of it for their own protest. But here's where this one differs a little bit. They seem to think the film was pretty important, as 3 protesters were taken into custody by the police for handing out free tickets to the film. Suddenly it's a little bit more serious, because, Operation Chinology,
took place in a democracy. People turned up in masks. It made life difficult for the Church of Scientology. I shouldn't laugh when I say that. But here, you know, they didn't get imprisoned, but here the stakes are a lot higher. What was going on in Thailand in 2014. And the people who were on the sharp end felt that this science fiction product was sufficiently important that people should see it because it would help them unpack what was going on in their real lives in Thailand in 2014. So, this is Rod T. Faulkner rather, writing in the Medium. Can everybody read that, by the way? Yeah, okay. Okay, so this talk is in no way academic. It's much more stream of consciousness about how I am feeling about the state of the Western world at the moment. And as such, it's not terribly difficult to knock holes in my argument, but I hope it's been sufficiently intriguing. See what I did there? Much of my fiction is predicated upon wondering what the future will look like if we remain on the path of inequality and inequity that we're on right now, of unrestrained parasitical capitalism where profit outweighs the needs of both the individual and society, of nationalism as bread and circuses, political distraction. But if I'm honest, I think if we continue on this path, we're not going to be around in the 300 to 400 years' time. And maybe that's what people want. Stories have meaning often beyond authorial intent. As writers, and more importantly as readers, we need to decide which of the blueprints we want to use for our future. Because to my mind, the futures offered by the likes of Kim Stanley Robinson, by the likes of the late great Ian M. Banks, are far more attractive than those offered by the likes of dystopian or dark future writers like myself and like Moore and Lloyd. Can I just say I'm not comparing myself to Moore and Lloyd, we just work in a similar oeuvre. On the other hand, who knows? Perhaps it's just science fiction authors being self-important. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Does anybody want to poke holes in my straw man argument? I think your hand went up at the first, sir, at the back.
Yeah, the last quote there mentioned the triviality of science fiction. Do
Yeah.
you think the fact that it's regarded as trivial acts as a means of getting an idea out into the mainstream, in which if you're minded to dismiss it, you can dismiss it, but then puts the idea out there to be thought about? I think we do thinking.
I think, yeah, it's sort of the chameleonic nature of popular culture as a whole. You put things out there, and maybe some of it takes hold, others of it don't. So yes, although I think actually what Asimov was talking about here was how poorly science fiction was regarded as serious literature at the time that he was working. But yes, I do accept your point. I think up in the, yeah, you, the one who just looked behind you. Yes, yeah.
Sorry, speaking of science fiction, do you think popular culture surrounding the Second World War, particularly comics and movies, had affected Brexit votes and culture surrounding that?
Sorry.
I'm talking about coming off science fiction. Do you think the popular culture surrounding the Second World War, particularly war comics and British war films, have had an effect on the Brexit vote and the general culture surrounding it? etc.?
So you're talking about UKIP and the current rise, yeah.
Right. It's a related question to your talk.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah. You're asking me to comment something that's a little bit perhaps out of, but yeah. I don't know. I can't understand that kind of thing because they oh, sorry, I'm supposed to be behind here. So the World War II imagery that is being used at the moment to sort of pump up nationalism, I just wasn't World War II against that sort of thing. And I know it's a simplification. I know that there was a degree of nationalism on our side, looking at them as an alien other and what have you. But it just seems, every time you get a Britain First leaflet through the door with a Spitfire on the front, you're going, they were fighting people like you. I find it really offensive because, I got relatives of living memory who fought in that war, and it's just, they seem to be horribly, horribly twisting their legacy. And it wasn't necessarily even people who went to war. It's, both my grandmothers and the sacrifices they made and things like that. So, yeah, I would agree with that. Any more questions? So, yeah, and then the lady in front of you after that.
There's several factors at work here, and we can look in the context of what you've been saying about the West at this point. We can look at what was happening behind the Iron Curtain before it came down. One of the very interesting factors there, and something that I saw in the conventions that started happening, especially Conviction in the Netherlands, which happened in 1990, there were vast numbers of people from behind the Iron Curtain for the first time could come to a Western science fiction convention. And they all knew their stuff, because Western science fiction, and in fact Russian, Polish, etc., science fiction, been circulating there for ages. In some is that form, not something you pay money for, but you get from a grottige Stettner, translated by an enthusiast. And the important thing, and Orwell recognised this in 1984, to be able to have a successful revolution, you have to be able to imagine that things can be better. And yes, there are things like Mockingjay, and pick any dystopian revolution story you want. They say something about how you do the revolution, but they don't say things about what comes later. Some science fiction does that, some of which you've identified.
Yeah, sort of. That was what I was alluding to. So much of science fiction is less to do with prediction and more to do with warning. And I think that's something that Brian Aldiss made very clear. So this comes back to our blueprints. Do you want a future like Hunger Games, or do you want a future like Ian Banks' Culture? Now, obviously, there's a huge gap between where we are now and the culture. But what do you want to aim for? What do you want to move across? What are the what is the bridge between those two things? What are the incremental actions that we could start taking? The lady who sat just in front of you, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so I was curious about, so sci-fi as a whole kind of started predominantly with female authors.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering what your thoughts are on the drift that's occurred between initially thinking of it as something inconsequential and then gradually coming to think of it as more of a form of resistance, tying in with a different demographic becoming well known for writing such works, even when it's usually people who are more aligned with those demographics or willing to fight for them who are writing the truly progressive stuff rather than the things which are more cut and paste copies.
Yes. I mean, I think broadly speaking, what happened and what may have gotten in the way of people taking science fiction seriously is sort of kind of what I think you're alluding to. men got in charge, and it wasn't just men. It was a particular, the golden age of science fiction. It's all manly men, and a kind of neo-colonial ideal and things like that. And once they got hold of it, they really didn't want to let go of it. I mean, Heinlein is still God to a lot of people who read science fiction and what have you. And as a result, and wrongly so, what we've done within the genre, and this has gone on within our lifetimes, is we have forced women, we have forced LGBT people, we have forced people of colour to fight to be part of our genre. And in doing so, it can't help but change it, and change it for the better. And because the stakes became so high, became so important, that was started to be reflected in the fiction. And I think that goes some of the way towards the changes that we've seen in fiction. This is somewhat hypocritical because I'm basically a pulp science fiction writer myself, but that is my thoughts on it though. How are we doing? Any more questions? Go ahead.
I was originally going to ask about Heinlein, and if you had any more to say about him, I'd be interested to hear it. But I guess on a related note, with this polarization in politics, and I guess with that spreading into society as a whole, I've seen sort of a trend of reactionaries rejecting attempts to get even superficial progressivism into mainstream. And do you see a possible response to that? A way to prevent it from just becoming another casualty of polarization?
I don't know. I don't know what to do about polarization. As I say, I'm a pulp science fiction author. It's largely here by accident. But to my mind, the approach to this is if people who have sort of polar opposite political, well, not polar opposite because I'm just not going to talk to a Nazi. I'm just really not. But
I was thinking, is there a risk of this sort of preaching to the choir and the people that actually need to have their views?
Well, something that I did
the most are going to be the people who are least likely to.
So my approach to that is if they approach you in good faith, deal with them in good faith. But I don't see a lot of that. Arguably from both sides. But I, for example, when I have sort of been discussing mostly online about things like these, when I've been approached in good faith, I've talked back in good faith. What I tend to find happens is people go, thank you for your thought, and then disappear and not respond to the rest of the discussion. So from my own echo chamber, I'm going, can these people's ideas stand up to challenges? But yeah, I don't know. My advice to people is if you're approached in good faith by somebody whose politics you can't get behind, then respond in good faith. And I'll be honest, I'm a pretty left-wing person, as no doubt you would have worked out. But things like fiscal conservatism, I disagree with it completely. But to my mind, it's a reasonable opinion to hold. I
understand.
Yeah. You're not. But by the time we get into wanting to sort of legislate or oppress people because of what they are, not what they're doing, if you see what I mean, I just got no time for it. Ed.
So you made a point about people vendetta masks and Stormtrooper cosplay.
Yeah.
So is what you're saying that when I'm designing my multimedia revolutionary science fiction project, I should make at least part of it, the one I want represented, easy to cosplay?
Do I get a cut of this if I give good advice? Yeah, you should totally do that, dude. Okay, I'm going to take one more question. I think you've had your hands up for a little while.
So you were speaking earlier a little bit about how you get interested in all this fires on it and that sort of thing. How much do you think of that as the problem that when you were saying that science fiction doesn't write about warnings, it often leaves the rebels or whatever in a sort of ideological vacuum where they go on to become wizard cops or put royalty back on planets. How much of that do you think is wrong?
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm following the question.
So, people taking the hero to represent whatever position they personally hold.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I read out that tweet which you just went up, and there's no way you guys are going to do it. Some of the takes on that, I'm baffled by the mental gymnastics involved in taking something like The Matrix and saying The Matrix is feminism or transsexual people, and going, how did you? I could sort of understand you seeing Darth Vader as cool or Judge Dredd as cool, but maybe not as a role model. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's and it's a fear when you're putting things out there.
That's the Empire.
What's that, London? Yeah, and it's a fear when you're putting things out there. You're sort of, you're going to write a story, and to my mind, politics aside, our first job is to entertain people, and then if we can get something beyond that, all the better. But you are sometimes sitting there going, well, how could this be twisted into something that you just really don't want to see? But I mean, there's only so much worrying you can do about that as creators, because if I'm honest, arseholes are going to be arseholes regardless of what we do. It's now past. Thank you very much. You've been very generous.